At the time of releasing this video, it's already been quite a while since one of the most popular mangas of all time has concluded. I'm of course talking about the Gojo Thirst Trap Jujutsu Kaisen. But even though the manga ended with a rather disappointing final chapter, and the news of a sequel never blessed our ears, I just can't shake the feeling that JJK could have been so much better. The same thing happened with Tokyo Revengers, and look, as much as I despise the anime for Bleach for its long drawn out arcs like the Arankar arc, and Orihime screaming actually every 2 seconds, I actually love the manga. Except for its ending, where I personally found the Ichigo and Aizen vs Yhwach fight lacking. Why could this be? And trust me, this is one deep rabbit hole. To make your life easy, yes, you the viewer, I'll list off some potential reasons why some manga might need to do some more hip thrusts in the gym. And I won't say feel free to skip to wherever you want because I know you will do it anyways. So, before we start slagging Gege Akutami, which by the way isn't even his real name, for not showing us the Uraume vs Hikari fight and building up a lot of plot points that never got any resolution like who Takaba was talking to in chapter 270 and what the merger exactly was supposed to do, we need to understand how manga serialization works. And trust me, after this video, you'll definitely be far more supporting of why mangaka deserve long breaks and better publishing schedules, and why the masses on Twitter or Reddit hating on an author for not releasing a chapter every single week are absolute idiots. And since we're on the topic of serialization, why not start at step 1? Let's say you want to be a mangaka. How does this work? Well, to begin with, a lot of mangaka tend to be both the authors and the illustrators of their work, so you best be a good writer and an artist, and as you can imagine, this is not an easy job. Some manga might have 2 people taking on the roles of illustrator and author, such as Blue Lock and Death Note. Once you have an idea, you start to draw out your thoughts into a one-shot, which is then presented to the editors and publishers. If the head honchos really like your work and they think it might stick with the audience, the one-shot gets a chance to be published. Once the one-shot is published, the audience votes on it, and if they really like it, the publishers will assign you an editor and you can start to work on entering weekly serialization with the publishers. Initially, you might start off in a magazine like V-Jump, but if your story has a lot of potential, you might even start off in the Weekly Shonen Jump. Let's say you have that potential and you move straight to the Weekly Jump magazine. Woohoo! You made it! Well, except now that you're serializing and your manga is being read by millions every week, you need to make sure that you always deliver the highest quality of writing and art. Go! Why is that? The simple answer is that the execs at the publishing company hold a serialization meeting around every 8 weeks or so, and the performance of your manga is scrutinized. This is reason number 1. There are only 20 manga spots available in the Weekly Shonen Jump and competition is always fierce, so if your manga isn't performing too well, it might get axed. This performance is dependent on the votes of the general public reading your chapters. Popular series like One Piece, which have been going on forever, generally end up taking the top spots in these polls, meaning the competition to stay afloat is tough, and the greater you fall, the more likely the manga is likely to get cancelled, with some mangas in their later stages only given a couple of chapters to wrap up the story. So, with this cutthroat environment, mangakas generally tend to have a couple of assistants helping them with the manga, because to be able to deliver roughly 20 pages of beautifully drawn art with a good story every single week by yourself is something that can't be sustained. And the pay comes from their own pocket. This can be especially problematic for mangaka who are just entering the industry, since they get paid on a per page basis, getting paid around 10,000 to 15,000 yen, with a contractual agreement to produce a certain number of pages every month. Even then, it's not easy, nor is it quick to continue the story while maintaining great art, good public reception, and staying true to what you originally wanted to do, and as such, it is almost impossible to do all of this within a regular 40-hour workweek. Reason number 2 is the endless nights spent drawing and coming up with a good story, often resulting in major health issues alongside other problems. Many authors end up with carpal tunnel syndrome and major back pain from spending so much time at their drawing stations, and the most famous example of this is Yoshihiro Togashi, the author of Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter. In some cases, overworking can cause such immense mental and physical stress that it can result in death, as in the case of Kentaro Miura, who unfortunately passed away at the age of 54 from acute aortic dissection, the risk of which can be increased by hypertension. But it doesn't end there either, because reason number 3 is the aforementioned editor. the editor might suggest changes, ask to redirect some plot points, or ask for other changes in the story. Sometimes, the editor may want to cut an ongoing arc short or extend the story beyond its natural ending point due to its popularity. This can also result in creative problems due to differences between the mangaka and the editor. That is not to say that all editors are bad, however, they play a key role in making sure that the manga is well received by the audience. What is the point that I'm trying to drive here though? It's the fact that serializing a manga on a weekly basis is hard. Combine that with the fact that the series needs to always meet the highest standards alongside very strict time constraints for weekly publications, not even taking into account things like mental and physical health as well as time for leisure, and you can start to understand just how fast-paced the world of a mangaka really is. And speaking of pace, that is another key component of a manga. The thing about writing a good story is the need for continual escalation with good pacing. This is something that is crucial to a story because without higher stakes, there's no motivations for characters to improve and progress further. This can often result in the problem of spiraling escalation because at the end of each arc, the character or characters need to be presented with a more difficult situation than before, which has the pros of a more thought out world and better character stories and background, but also has the cons of increasing complexity and involvement of plot points that might not be resolved or just being endless. This problem can be further aggravated by the pacing of said arcs. This is reason number 4. A good example of terrible power escalation is Goku from Dragon Ball Z. Okay, I said it, Goku has a problem. Starting with Kaioken, to Spirit Bomb, to SS1, SS2, SS3, SS4, SSB, Ultra Instinct, I mean holy shit, man has more plot armor than Ichigo. Goku literally goes from urban level destruction to f***ing universal level just by screaming louder. Like come on, is this not too much? At that point, the ending is literally an isekai title. After being transported to a low power level planet, I, Son Goku, went from being the strongest earthling to destroying entire universes. This can often make the ending very unsatisfying, regardless of how good the process of getting there was. And JJK does not get off the hook either. The manga's pacing of the Culling games was atrocious. Sure, there were some good moments, but it could have been used to provide further exposition on the motives of characters, or give backstories instead of focusing on fights which didn't need to exist, like the whole Reggie-Star thing and Maki vs Superman Dido, which I'm sure you remember fondly. This meant that while the manga did continue for much longer after the arc, the final arc being cut short with many unresolved plot points just felt that much harder to digest, because we could have gotten more information on Sukuna's Heian era prowess, or honestly a better Megumi vs Sukuna fight. Reason number 5. Sometimes the reason for a manga not having the best ending is because the mangaka doesn't know how to end it, or they just abandon the project. And unfortunately, one of the greatest seinen is a victim of this. Vagabond. Being part of the big 3 of seinen manga, Vagabond is a highly praised manga, and not for no reason. The characters, the art, the story, they're all absolutely fantastic. If so, what happened to its manga? Well, unfortunately, it is currently on an infinite hiatus because Takehiko Inoue is a perfectionist, and the overwhelming pressure to create a perfect final arc left him drained and unenthusiastic about the manga, which honestly is fair. It's better to have an unfinished work which is still regarded as some of the best ever to be written and drawn than to have a rushed ending and ruin the legacy created. And not knowing how to end a manga is completely fair when people have extremely high expectations, and that's the bonus reason. Sometimes it's us. We have such incredibly high expectations that we can't fathom why a manga might end with a soft touch rather than an explosive blast. And what better example for this than my personal favorite top manga of all time for now, 20th Century Boys. Many people dislike the ending for being rushed, but I found it was okay, especially with 21st Century Boys acting as a sort of epilogue. And the thing is, I think the reason why a lot of people found the ending to be less than ideal was because of just how great the rest of the story was, which is the common underlying factor for all of the mangas that I've mentioned. So just know that sometimes all of this boils down to us. And instead of writing essays about why a manga ending is bad, sometimes we just gotta chill. In conclusion, just be nice, I guess, and appreciate what we have today, even if it isn't perfect, because regardless of what others might say, if it made you happy, then isn't that all that matters?